Hey everybody, if you're new here, my name's Joe Previtt. I work as a software engineer and I've been studying languages for a while now. So in college, I studied Spanish, Portuguese, Italian, a little bit of Mandarin. And recently, so I graduated college back in like 2016, so it's been a long time. But in the last couple of years, I've kind of reinvigorated my passion for studying languages. That kind of came out of my wife and I had a daughter and we wanted to raise her bilingual. And so I had heard about Refold and, what kind of like was familiar with the idea of like comprehensible input and immersion learning and all that. And so finally decided to kind of pick back up Spanish. I stopped doing languages in college because I picked up programming. And so all of my time spent doing, Spanish, Italian, whatever languages was replaced with programming languages. So JavaScript, really at the time. Now it's TypeScript. But anyway, so I picked back up Spanish right before my daughter was born. And at the 3-month mark, so when my daughter was about 3 months, that's when we decided that we were going to switch full-time to Spanish. And what I mean by that is we switched to the one parent, one language. But I don't want this video to be about that. All that is to say is to give some background on my experience with Refold for the past, my daughter's 2 now, so it's been about 2 years. And now that I've kind of gotten my Spanish to a point where I feel very comfortable with it, it's not all, I'm not done with it. Obviously, there's always more to learn, more to improve. But I'm at a point where I'm kind of itching for, let's say, something new. And so I've decided to start studying Italian again. But like I said, so I wanted to kind of give an introduction, and then I also wanted to kind of talk about my previous Italian experience. Haven't done one of these in a while. So for Italian, I took Spanish since 8th grade, right? I grew up in Arizona, and then for Italian, senior year in college comes around. I've got extra space for more electives, and I was like, you know what? Let's do Italian. And what's cool is I had been doing Spanish before that. My university had a class that was Portuguese for Spanish speakers. So I learned Portuguese in Spanish, which was really cool. So they leveraged a lot of the concepts, which I think helped my learning. And then with Italian, I took Italian 101 and 102, so traditional classes. What's crazy to think is like this was in 2015, 2016, but like I don't think I had thought to like create a separate YouTube channel in Italian or like look for Italian YouTube creators or like follow people on Instagram or Twitter that are speaking Italian. I was doing, some of these like language exchanges, like I would find people and we would talk through WhatsApp. I didn't know what crosstalk was of like they speak in their native and you speak in your native, and I had done that with a couple people without really knowing, but I was of the mindset of like, I need to do the thing that I want to get better at. So I would try and do a lot of output. So I would try and do like, let's do a day in Italian and a day in English kind of thing. But anyways, all of that is to say, I took Italian 101, 102, so textbook learning. I had some friends who I was speaking with, through WhatsApp, maybe doing voice messages. And then after I graduated college, I actually started a master's program in Italian linguistics and literature. So this was also in the US, obviously, and this was in California. And so I started this program only having a year of Italian under my belt. So I really had to do some catching up that first semester. So I took, I think it was like Italian 336, Italian 312A and Italian 335. So undergraduate classes, kind of like that third year classes. So I kind of skipped 1 year. I didn't do any 200 level classes. And I'll post a link up in the corner here of a video that I did of me speaking Italian. I think it was back in like November 2016 or so. And because I was doing this to kind of measure my progress, right? So yeah, I'll link that playlist here. Then in the spring, that's kind of when I started doing some graduate level classes. So I took Italian 650, which I think was a literature class. I did another Italian kind of undergrad class, 336, which I think was conversation. And again, I'm still doing this kind of chatting with WhatsApp. There was actually a colleague, like a PhD student from Italy, visiting and like doing I forgot what it's called, like a residence with us. So I got to know her really well, and she spoke English really well, but when she wanted to kind of like just speak Italian, when English was too much for her, we would speak in Italian. So I got a lot of some practice there, like conversation. And then that summer, so summer of 2017, I led a study abroad trip in Italy, in Recanati. And so the nice part about that was, I put on some presentations. I just had to get people signed up. And then in exchange, instead of like getting paid, I got a free place to stay in Recanati. So I got to hang out in Italy for the summer. So yeah, during that time, I was still, that was kind of around the time where I made the decision to leave grad school and go study programming. So I wasn't, I was in Italy, but like 8 hours out of the day, I was like sitting in front of a computer studying JavaScript. So I wasn't, taking advantage, which, I ended up where I am today, but, it would have been nice to be able to really use Immersion to the fullest. And probably one of the coolest things while I was there, like just to give you an idea of my level, it was probably like a B1. And one of the coolest things I did was I have Italian ancestors, both on my mom's side and my dad's side, but my mom's side. And my uncle had an address. He had exchanged letters with them. He's like, I don't know if they still live there. Here's an address. I think it was in like Senigallia, like small town. And I was like, okay, like, I think it was Friday or Saturday. I was like, let's go to Senigallia and see if we can find them. So I had the address, had like Google Maps downloaded for that area, went. And yeah, I ended up meeting some of my family. And it was all in Italian, obviously. Like I remember knocking on the door, and this lady, it's like a 2 or 3 story building, and she's like, in Italian, she's basically like, whose son are you? Like, who's your family? Because I was like, oh, like, we're related. Obviously, it could be like a scam, so she's being careful. But yeah, I ended up meeting, it was like a cousin who was probably in his 30s, his sister who had a daughter who was like, I think 4 at the time, and then their parents were the ones who lived there. We all like went to the park and hung out, and they invited me in for lunch, had like coffee and things. And, it was just, the coolest part was like the language opened this door for me. And so that's kind of, obviously I wasn't having complex conversations. Like I said, I was like a B1. So it was enough to have a conversation and like make this experience happen. But after doing Refold and like really digging into like my Spanish, for example, I could really see the difference of, comprehensible input and like language activation and just like the whole Refold methodology. And so I'm like, hey, like I want to try that again, but kind of from scratch. And it's not from scratch because I have some Italian. It's mostly forgotten, but I kind of wanted to make this video to kind of talk about that approach. So yeah, like phase 1, I guess what I'm calling it is I got the Italian 1K deck. I got it in Spanish, which is cool because I kind of get to do that whole like Italian for Spanish speakers approach, similar to the Portuguese for Spanish speakers. And I'm going to do kind of like that input first approach where it's kind of like you focus not on output, but getting, let's say, 500 to 1,000 hours of input. So for me, because I have the previous Italian experience, I think Dreaming Spanish says to cut it in half. So for me, I'm going to try and do conversation or output around 500 hours of input. So before that, I'm not really going to do any output, any writing, or any, I might do crosstalk, again, which is like find an Italian friend. Maybe we do voice messages. They speak in Italian, I speak in English. Might try that after I finish the 1K deck. But yeah, so phase 1, the deck. Phase 2 is kind of to start, watching, like probably learn with Lucrezia, like that YouTube channel or another one. And try and get to that 500 hour mark of immersion. So, mix of passive and active. But I'll probably finish the 1K deck, Anki says, in around April or May. So yeah, And then the last thing I wanted to include within this video was a live assessment of me trying to figure out how much of the Italian from earlier in my life do I remember. That's still there. And so I did this assessment. I'll, put a part of this here in the video. And yeah, the conclusion of that was that, with some of these like vlog style videos and subtitles on, I can kind of get a gist. Obviously there's a lot of contextual clues that help with that. But yeah, I thought that would be fun to do and kind of share that off, and I'll put that video as well up here and in the description below. But yeah, that's it. Thanks for watching. Hoping to do more updates as I progress through Italian. So see you around.